It will be unfair to this country if your thought is not discussed in detail.
Just like it's unfair for you not to give us your book.
I'm going to give it to you.
To tell us the truth about what you people were doing in YK92 and where you go that body, Jirongo.
I've given you a glimpse of it. Yeah.
Why did they attach your name, personally, your name to the 500 shilling note?
Thank God I'm alive. They really tried hard to look for a scapegoat. That scapegoat was meant to be YK92, a team that Jirongo led. They tried and tried and tried, including elimination. I'm not a journalist. I've just decided to look at various leaders we have, particularly young leaders like Sifuna and the others. We discuss so that we start forming a picture of what country do we really need and whose responsibility is it that we always end up making mistakes. My name is Cyrus Jirongo. I've been a youth leader.
Youth leader or youth winger?
Maybe both of them. I've been a member of parliament. I've been a minister. I'm a businessman. And I'm still a politician. My brother Sifuna, we agreed we have a chat today just to discuss what is happening in the country at the moment.
Yeah.
And also look at different ways on how this country can get out of the issues bedeviling it at the moment.
Yeah.
One of the issues that is really disturbing Kenyans is whether the leadership understands its role as far as power management is concerned. And basically it's out of pronouncements. Pronouncements like, I was given a sword. That sword was for protecting Kenyans. There are many other pronouncements.
Yeah. But
maybe if you discussed that particular pronouncement, so that in your understanding, what is really the use of a sword? When you're being sworn in as a president, you're given a sword. What does it mean? What are you supposed to understand as the leader being given that sword? And what is its use?
First of all, let me say this is the strangest show I'm going to do.
Yes.
Because as you know, I'm used to talking to professional journalists.
Yes.
People who are in the industry and so on and so forth. We've done so many of those talk shows. And I was telling you earlier that I've gotten to a place where I feel like I shouldn't even go to those shows because there is nothing that we haven't said. Yes. There is nothing that we didn't warn Kenyans about the people you elect into office. So sitting here talking to somebody who's a political practitioner yourself, somebody who's a legend in this space, and we grew up fearing your name. Cyrus, let me tell you, we used to be afraid of you when we were growing up. And the first time anyone gave me money from politics, I went to the Kano office in Kakamega. I think this must have been around 92. I was about 10 years old.
Yes.
And my mom was dragging my hand. We lined up at the Kano office in Kakamega. It's opposite the KCB. It used to be opposite the now KCB Bank.
Yes.
Where they built the governor's office. And we lined up. And they gave us each 500 shillings. And that 500 shillings used to be called Jirongo, for those who don't know.
Yes.
Sasa wewe unajua you are a legend in this space. So it is always good to sit and compare notes. You have a lot of things to share with us in terms of just reminding Kenyans where this country has come from. And the ease with which we can find ourselves back to those days that we don't want to go back to. So I am sure you're talking about your friend. This is somebody that you know for a long time, the current president. Somebody you have warned Kenyans about. I was present at the burial of, what was his name?
Juma?
Yes, Jacob Juma. When you told us that the biggest mistake that Kenyans can ever make is to have this gentleman handed power. Because his view and interpretation of power is very raw. And when he talks about a sword, his interpretation is actually that sword is to be used on his perceived enemies or enemies of his regime or his government. He doesn't understand constitutionalism, and actually for us we have concluded, and we knew from the start, that he doesn't know what he's doing. So when he is handed power, he thinks that the power is to be used against those he perceives to be his enemies in the country, not knowing that in fact when you take that Bible and take the oath and you're given a constitution and that sword, it is to protect Kenyans and not to use it against Kenyans that you perceive to be enemies. So that statement was quite interesting, but it is not out of character, because that is who William Ruto is, and that is his view of power, that in fact it is to be wielded absolutely against those he perceives to be his enemies. I was watching Otiende Amolo the other day, was on Citizen TV. He explained this concept quite well, that in fact the sword is for you to protect what we already have, what we hold dear as Kenyans. And what are those things? What are those things that are important to Kenyans? It is to protect the property of Kenyans. It's to protect the life and health of Kenyans. It is not to be used against Kenyans. But this is something, of course, the president cannot grasp. So for him, every time that he encounters difficulty in achieving his goal, then he automatically goes to the sword and says this is what he needs to wield. But not understanding that many of the problems that is currently facing his administration, the frustrations that he's facing with the courts, they are self-made, because we do not operate with the Kano constitution. We have a new constitution that has totally shifted power. Even for you, Cyrus, you know things are different. Yeah. There are things that we could not do. I mean, we could not sit here and have this conversation. There was only one TV station, and all it used to do was to sing Baba na Mama. When we were growing up, remember, every news item used to start with Mutukufu rice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think for you and the people who are there and who have seen the transformation of the country, it is important for us to have these conversations and tell Kenyans that that is not what the sword is for. The sword is for protection of the people and the ideals and the values of the country as espoused in the constitution. So if you look at the current state of the country, what is the greatest threat to Kenyans? The greatest threat to Kenyans is not external. We don't need him to wield that sword against anybody, because he himself is the greatest threat to Kenyans. If you look at the year that Kenyans have had in 2023, it is the worst year. If you speak to anyone, people did not even have proper celebrations for Christmas because they don't have money. As we speak right now, many people have been unable to take their kids to school. Schools have opened. There is basically no money. If you look at the level of taxation, we don't have anything that he can use that sword to protect. That is why he wants to use it against us. When the leader of a country stands up and he tells investors that in this country there are only three options. Either you follow what I am telling you, or I send you to heaven, or I jail you, or you go back to your country. That is somebody who has been corrupted and with power. So he feels that the only thing to do is to use that sword against his own countrymen. So we are in a very difficult situation, and we, as a young generation, especially of politicians, will be looking to have conversations with people like you and tell us. You know, there are people who are saying that even Moi's days were better because things used to work. Here in Nairobi, they say the buses used to leave on schedule. You could drink tap water in town. The education system was okay. They're not fumbling around with the education of our kids. So it is for you guys who have been there to make sure that you explain to the people that things can actually work, and that there are things that were not okay that we learned from that experience and would not want for us to go back there again.
What are Kenyans looking for? We've heard in many public meetings, in very many discussions, that Korea, the so-called the tigers of the East, were actually at the same level with us, and we're even richer than them. Mm. And Kenyans are looking for something to share. Hence, they need to have a sword to protect that which Kenyans will have, not to have a sword to destroy that which they have. In my view, how do you look at the priorities we have as a country? Is housing a solution? Yeah. Is that what we are doing, fleecing, getting this from Kenyans, that you are creating housing? What is really the concept of an economy growing? creating employment, getting everybody busy to produce.
I have a very different measure of the success of a government. It is not in concrete and mortar. It is not in the roads that you build.
No.
And this is one of the criticisms that I have of Kibaki. Of course, people praise him a lot. But I think the primary measure of the success of a president or a government is actually how the people feel about each other, about their country, about their lives. So if you see Kibaki, Kibaki is an interesting president for me because it was the first time that I voted in 2002. We had 20 years, so I just gotten my idea about 2 years ago. That is the first time I was choosing a president. And we were very enthusiastic. I was in the university then, I was in second year. We were very happy because we were kicking Kanu out. What you guys, the machine that you people built.
Machinery.
Yes.
Yes.
We were just happy that you guys, we didn't want you guys at all.
Yes.
So we went to the polls very enthusiastic. I remember even just the energy at the polling stations. It was something very different. And if you remember after that election, there was a measure that Kenyans were the most optimistic people. Cyrus, the joy that we used to get when we realized we could arrest a police officer, you cannot compare that feeling with the feeling of a new road. It's not the same thing. When they say Kenyans were the most optimistic after that election, what does it mean? It is very critical to analyze what a government represents to the people. You must give people hope that the country can actually change, that all the bad manners that we had been practicing can be left behind. We can have a new country where everybody is happy, things work for you, you have equal opportunity, you're not going to be judged because of your second name. Because my name is Sifuna from Western Kenya, immediately somebody sees my CV, puts it aside, and wants to look at the Kipkuleis. And that is the bad manners that we don't want to go back to. And you have seen, in the current regime, every single time William Ruto puts out a gazette notice, appointments to boards, appointments to parastatals, to any government institution, it is just his village mates, you know? What does that do to young people from Nyanza, young people from the coast, who have actually also gone to school and they are looking for a country that works for everyone? That feeling is the most critical. And the reason why I have always blamed Kibaki for losing that moment that Kenyans were the most optimistic, because it didn't take long. Within 1.5 years, there were already people from his Mount Kenya backyard saying, you know, some of his characters are used to being in opposition. They are already uncomfortable in government. They should leave. You remember the Murungarus? And they used to talk so badly. And that hope, that optimism that we had acquired after kicking Kanu out and having this new government that we thought would work for everyone was absolutely lost. And for me, that makes everything else that Kibaki did, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So if you look at the current regime, what they're doing, there is something very disturbing. That in fact, as you said yourself, there is no one person who knows everything. There's no one person who knows everything. But Kenya has a lot of resources in terms of its people. People have ideas. They can help you to deliver a country that works for everyone. But we have a situation where for as long as the idea is coming from Sifuna, and I am known to associate with the opposition, that idea is dismissed up front. They will not even utilize the ideas that are coming from the opposition every time they tell us, oh, what is your alternative? If we bring alternatives to the table, they will not listen to them. They would rather fail with their ideas than grab an idea from their perceived opponents that actually works for the country. I have told you, we used to be afraid of you. It's quite amazing that I can sit here with you. People like you are people who are, kusema jina yako ni gumu. People like Nicholas Biwott. I told people a story of when I was growing up in the village, and ukisikia Land Rover ya polisi inakuja, your own father runs into the sugarcane and leaves you there with your mother. And he has done nothing, because at that time, it is the state to tell you that you have done something wrong. And they take you somewhere where your family doesn't.
That's true. I lived that age.
Yeah. So you guys, Kwanza, you need to tell us, what was wrong with you people?
Maybe before I even deal with that. First of all, by the way, let me just give you a little gist of what happened in those days.
Yes.
That sometimes you couldn't pronounce the name of president.
Yeah, you could.
It was a crime.
Not even president. Don't even go to president. Even just cabinet ministers and PSs in the interior.
Yes.
How do you say it was a crime? Name? No, it was a crime.
the way Kenyans perceive some of us is that we have been in government for a very long time.
Yes.
Yet I've never been in government. I was in government for 1 year.
When?
As a minister during Moi's presidency.
Yes.
The last year before he left, 2021.
Yes.
In 1992, and then I'll come to the Kibaki story.
Yes.
Moi nominated me to be a member of parliament. He even gave me a ministerial position, and I refused because I never wanted to be a politician.
You didn't get to parliament?
That is how Wetangula was nominated. I gave Wetangula my nomination in 92.
Allah.
But later on, I had to fight to go to parliament to protect myself. Remember? in 97, the same machinery I was protecting came after me.
Okay.
And Orengo said it very well another time. Let me not go into that. Let's deal with the leadership, the current leadership, and what Kenyans are looking for. I agree with you to a greater extent. But I want to put in some defense for Kibaki. Thoughts are things.
Yeah.
In the entire history of leadership in this country, Kibaki came up with a thought and created a vision for this country.
Yes.
And remember, you cannot build this house where we are seated if you have not imagined it. Kibaki had the imagination. When you talk about Kenyans having been very optimistic when Kibaki was elected with the late Wamalwa, they were optimistic because that picture that we will be liberated, we will move forward, we will grow to the level of the tigers, the Asian tigers, was born when Kibaki and Wamalwa were elected as the leaders of this country. And we all were excited, whether we were against or not. At that time, I was pushing Uhuru because I still had this madness of believing that the younger generation would provide better leadership than the older generation. And I pushed Uhuru so hard to be the KANU candidate, believing that time has come. We are in this trouble, we are in as a country, because maybe the leadership we have is archaic, they don't understand yesterday. But with time, we've seen Kibaki creating a vision that Kenyans could imagine that in Vision 2030, and maybe a free advice to those that are in power. If I was in power today, my focus would be on opening up the Northern Corridor, Lapset. And if anyone did that and took that seriously, Kenya today, the current situation we look at, unemployment at over 10%. If you open that corridor, remember the economy of Kenya is the corridor from Mombasa all the way to Uganda. Now that would have been another corridor with even a higher population because you're talking about Ethiopia, you're talking about South Sudan, you're talking about Somalia, you're talking about Northern Uganda, and that can spill over even into Central African Republic. So you're talking about a very huge population compared to the economy we are relying on today. Now, in my defense of Kibaki, Kibaki, yourself, myself, understand that thoughts are things. Create a vision and live towards a vision. This vision, we lost it maybe 11 years ago. We never lived a journey. We lived a different thing altogether. So Kibaki at least created a direction where the country needed to go. It is not in what he achieved. It's not the roads that he managed to repair, although that is also a lot of success, given that the country had a dilapidated infrastructure and nobody would move.
I don't fault his economic policies, by the way. And vision is important in terms of you draw up a plan like what the Chinese did a few years ago. About a few decades ago, they just decided that we are going to put this country in a certain space, and they get to working on that. There's nothing wrong with the vision. But I am telling you, Cyrus, even if you built all the roads, even if you did all the beautiful railways from here to Zambia, or wherever it is you want to take them, if your own people are at war with each other, you have done nothing. In fact, for me,
that's a fact.
That was the biggest opportunity because we lost a very, very important thing. I remember when I was voting, I voted for Kibaki knowing Kibaki was a Kikuyu. The thought never crossed my mind that he was going to remind me when he got into power that I was not from his area. No. In fact, me, I'm a Luhya. I have never voted for a Luhya. Never. All the times I voted for Kibaki once, and I voted for Raila all the other times that we have had elections. Why is it that the people who were singing Kibaki's name, when he came from the airport, when he had come from the UK, who do you think were those young people who were singing alongside
the
his
rest
vehicle?
Of you.
It was me. Yeah. Who were those people who were singing Yote Yawezekana Bila Moi at Uhuru Park? It was me. So what happened that between 2002 and 2005, when we went to the referendum on we wanted Kibaki out. How is it possible that within a space of 3 years, you have lost the entire nation? By the time we go into the elections of 2007, it is 42-1. What have you done? Who cares how many roads you've built? Nobody at that particular point in time cares. What you need to do as a president, in fact, the biggest legacy anybody will ever achieve with this country, the president who will bury tribalism.
Perfect.
That is the person who will celebrate. But these other characters come here and say, you have a vision. And you yourself said, maybe these young people, like Uhuru and Ruto then, who got into power in 2012, maybe would push the country forward. But then you get Uhuru and Ruto, they take the vision that Kibaki had. And this vision was developed during the coalition government and even the initial government. The reason why we were seeing movement and optimism, if you look at the cabinet that Kibaki had, for instance, Kenyans could see like a picture of the nation.
The nation.
Yes, and it was based on competence, not regions.
Good.
We are saying, even if, they tell us now that the presidents for Kenya will only come from 2 tribes in eternity, from the Kalenjin and from the Kikuyu, we can accept, like me, I can accept and say yes. But what then becomes the responsibility of those 2 tribes? The responsibility of those 2 tribes, we have accepted you will be the ones to produce presidents forever, but get us the best of you. You can't just get any Kikuyu, no. Not just any Kalenjin. Get somebody who's competent to do the job. So the criticism I have around Kibaki is that, yes, we have this vision. Then you lose the vision because you have lost the people. The country must work, the government must work for the people. If the people are not feeling good about themselves, about their country, about their status, about their welfare, nobody is going to bother about the roads that you've built. So the economic policy was on track because of the sort of people that he got. We go into the elections in 2012 and we get people who then elevate private commercial interest above the interest of the nation. So you yourself have identified. The plan was already there for LAPSSET. Why did LAPSSET collapse? There was a plan to dualize the road from Malaba to Mombasa because it just makes sense. It's common sense. And then do a railway the same way. From the SGR was supposed to go all the way from Mombasa to Malaba, so that then Uganda and the others could sign up and say, yes, this is going to ease doing business within the region. Then somebody decides that, first of all, we are not going to utilize the plans that were there initially. We're going to get a new contractor because now private interests have come in. You change the vision 2030 to be your vision 2010, that within the next 10 years, I must have made X amount of money. Look at the amount of money that was used on compensation of non-existent landowners along the corridor. Commercial interests. Look at where the railway now finally ended up. And then somebody decides that he's going to put a private port in Naivasha. That was never the vision. That's why I'm saying we need to get to a place where we realize that for as long as we have these bad manners in politics, that I elevate myself into office so that I can benefit myself and my friends and cronies financially, we are never going to move as a nation.
Basically, I think we are talking about the same thing.
Yes.
That power, because really we are discussing this issue of what a sword means.
Yes.
Power is organized, competent knowledge. And the competence is not a preserve of one community. And that our country is retrogressing basically because those that have been in leadership base their competence on tribe other than really ability to perform.
Yeah. We have a system that does not work for us right now. You have a president and you have parliament, which is supposed to be an independent arm of government that oversights the the national executive. But the interpretation has been because all these people have been elected on the same party of the president, they think that they are there in parliament to protect their government. And that is where we have failed as a country. So parliament was the first one to fall. In fact, it fell in 2012 when they had what they used to call tyranny of numbers in parliament. But members of parliament forget that in a presidential system, your job is to oversight as an institution of parliament. The way Congress works in the US, because in a presidential system, you are supposed to oversight as an institution, you oversight the executive. Our members of parliament elected on the party that forms government think they are there to protect government. So you see what happens right now. William Ruto basically has taken over parliament, that every single thing that he sends to parliament, even if it is against the interest of the same members of parliament and their people. You have seen the examples of the finance bill. In the Senate, we had a spectacle that senators are being told to vote for less amount of money to go to their own counties. And they actually just vote the way the president has said. Now, after the success that he achieved with putting parliament in his pocket, he has now fixed his eyes on the judiciary. We are going to lose this entire republic if that happens. Because at the end of the day, if you have a dispute, like now if I have a dispute with the state, if I'm arrested today, and then the Chief Justice is having a meeting as we speak with the president to say, next week I'm going to arrest Sifuna. Please don't give him bail. Because I am not in that discussion. And that discussion can only result in the fabric of the constitution being loosened. What are these people sitting down to discuss? So even this constitution, if you look at what had been proposed in the Bomas draft, even on the appointment of judges, for instance, Kenyans had said very clearly, they do not want any presidential role in the appointment of judges. But then, after you go to Kilifi and you go to Naivasha, there are people telling the president, no, traditionally as a president, lazima uweke kidole. Yeah? So we say, okay, let us just retain some residual power for him. After the JSC appoints, let the president just gazette or whatever it is. That
it becomes a problem.
Then it becomes a problem because you get to Uhuru.
Interest.
Uhuru looks at the list and says, I have a problem with this one and this one, I am not going to gazette. And there's nothing you can do. There's no constitutional mechanism for you to resolve that problem. So Ruto works as lyrical and says, the president has no role, the judiciary should be independent because he is outside. And then he comes into power to demonstrate that now he is a believer in the constitution and rule of law. He appoints the judges and we all praise him and say, oh, this one finally understands. But look at what is happening now. When a president stands up and says he will not respect a court order, and he thinks he's addressing his villagers in Kamagut, no. When you speak as a president, the entire world listens. You have investors from other countries. Cyrus, you yourself have been a victim of investing, then a dispute arises. You go to court and stay there for years.
For years. 32 years I'm still in court.
That's what I'm saying. You have not been paid your money. And you might never see it. You might never see that money. So when an investor is thinking of bringing a project to this country, and it is the nature of business that disputes might arise. You want to invest a country where, first of all, the dispute resolution mechanism is clear, it is fast, it is efficient, that within 3 years, you should be able, even 3 years is too long, you should be able to get a decision within 3 months of filing a case. That yes, Cyrus is wrong, Sifuna is right, pay Cyrus this amount of money. That's what should happen. So an investor sitting somewhere in Los Angeles, looking at like he went to the Silicon Savannah. What is it called? Silicon Valley. To look for investors to come to Kenya. Now, that same investor is watching Kenyan news and is hearing that president saying that he is not going to respect a decision of the court because he has a sword that he was given and it's not for cutting vegetables. So what happens? That investor will think, what happens if I have a problem with the regulator? You have come here to set up an IT firm. Or a communications company like Safaricom or Vodafone or the others, and then you have a dispute with the Communication Authority of Kenya. You go to court. You know you are right. The Communications Authority of Kenya is wrong. William Ruto calls the Chief Justice and tells the Chief Justice that guy cannot win that case, and even if you give him the order, I will not respect it. Who will put their money here?
Actually, I agree with you, Sifuna, but the situation we are in, looking at the world, the economy of this world is run by, over 50% is run by two nations. That is China and India. They run more than 50%
Yeah.
of the economy of of the world. They have formed an organization called BRICS, which then seems to include a lot of people from the Middle East. We have Egypt in it, we have Russia in it, we have most of South American countries in it, which then suggests that maybe around 60-70% of the world economy is going to be driven by that bloc.
Yes.
And you, as a person who is painting a rosy picture for Kenya, you decide maybe it is not the right thing for me to associate with because I have a master somewhere I'm reporting to, and that master is not part of that system.
Yeah.
What kind of leadership, in your view, do you think Kenya should elect? An independent leader who has a vision to follow, or a leader who has to follow the whims of blocs? I remember during independence, we had a foreign policy. As a country, we were unaligned. By then, we had very powerful voices. The Kwame Nkrumahs of this world, the Julius Nyereres of this world. Mandela was languishing in prison, but the vision was clear that we need to independently have a Pan-African thought. And I remember the late Tom Mboya described African socialism in a very interesting way, Tom Mboya. And Tom Mboya still was a friend of the West. But he could still understand that I'm an African and this is the way we should move forward. Why, as a country, don't we have the ability to realize that Sifuna can stand firm and protect our values, our culture, our interest, our foreign policy in a direction that associates us with prosperity rather than serving people because they might help me to remain in power because their narrative is so powerful, is always what is taken, they control opinion. I remember Mandela telling America one time that, yes, you're my friend, but don't choose friends for me. Do you believe really we are choosing right friends? Do you really believe even in the neighborhood we are doing the right thing?
No, first of all, you see, like my last comment on the constitution and the question of competence and the criteria for leadership. As I told you, the Bomas process had properly diagnosed all our problems and provided the solution.
Yes.
So if you look at Article 73, the way it had been crafted, the entire chapter on leadership and integrity, the way Kenyans wanted to be crafted was such that you would weed out people who are incompetent, people who lack integrity, and people who are not suitable for office from ever running for office. But then, and that requirement for integrity, competence, and suitability was to be applied on leadership at both levels of appointed leadership and elective leadership. When they went to meddle with the constitution, they separated appointive office and elective office, so that the guiding principles of leadership and integrity under Article 73, if you read it in its current state, only requires competence, integrity, and suitability when it comes to appointive slots, but not on elections. In this country, you cannot even have a discussion on introducing minimum educational competence on elected leaders. You have heard that the pushback that has been there when there have been attempts to introduce at least a basic minimum, even just a Form 4 certificate for members of the county assembly. They say no. They say, oh, leadership is from God. Then you have this God-chosen president. And you know, at the end of the day, there is a way to measure competence. It is scientific. If you cannot do this job, don't apply for the job. So that is part of the problem we have. Number two, the way the world works now, we have moved from the times when you could actually run your own affairs. You say, this is Kenya, it is hidden, an enclave hidden somewhere here, we can do our own things now. Of course, the COVID pandemic was the best example of just how interconnected the world is. It is impossible for you to run an economy anywhere in this world without external influences. But the way that you interact with those external influences, because nobody is here to help you to succeed. they are also pursuing their own personal interests. And the global powers will look at the political landscape and decide that the way this Sifuna is talking, I don't think he is going to, if we allow him to go into power, he's going to finish us. He's going to look this side or going to look that side. So it is a big problem. And we as the opposition spoke very strongly about external interference in our elections. You have global powers always trying to extend their influences beyond certain borders. They say, oh, this and this and this, and to impose their own ways of thinking and their ideals and values on societies that are basically not ready for some of those conversations, or at least have more pressing needs. And societies evolve and take time. So it is not possible for you to just come and dump everything at once. I remember the newest country, Southern Sudan, when they became independent. And, you know, they were starting from zero. These were people who were fighting the bush. They have nothing. There's no road, no tarmac, no company that produces anything, no banks. And everybody was rushing. You get somebody who has just come from the bush and you give them an iPhone 10. You know, it's like, even for me, we had to progress Omwami, slowly. We are the generation, we used those dial phones.
Yes.
We went to pay phones. We went to Simu ya Jamii. We went to Nokia 3310. Then we came to the first touch screen, flip phones. Pole. Now ukinipea iPhone, naona hiyo progression. Lakini wewe unatoa mtu msitu unampatia iPhone 15. Unaona? So societies take time to progress, and this commercial and political interests of the foreign countries, really you have to be very careful how you navigate them, because at the end of the day, it should be the interests of the people. William Ruto right now is entirely a slave of the IMF and the global powers from the West. He's a total slave. He himself admits, yesterday he was saying, he is okay being called Zakayo. For as long as the IMF is happy, we are able to service our debt. But what about the people that elected you to the office? How about, you know, when he was campaigning, he said he was going to form a government of Mamambogas, Bodas, and the others. He never mentioned the IMF. Those Mamambogas didn't know that the IMF was coming to become the biggest shareholder in William Ruto's government. And for as long as they are happy, everybody else can sort of, you know.
If I understand you very well, is that we have a leadership that never in their mind understood where we want to go.
No.
And maybe to a large extent, we should also be asking Kenyans, if there's no original idea, I come and call a coalition Kenya Kwanza. I come and then say, the people who are making us suffer are the rich. So you create rich versus the poor. And then it is a similar thing that Trump had done in America. America first, Kenya Kwanza. That literally tells you it is copy and paste.
Correct.
The poor versus the rich, Americans versus the immigrants.
Correct.
What kind of electorate are we dealing with?
It's politics of division, because you see also people can be led. So it requires that if you are in a position of influence, you are leading people, lead them in the right way. Kenya Kwanza has now turned to IMF Kwanza, because everything that William Ruto does, imposing this extra taxation, it is not the people of Kenya who have asked for this extra taxation. In fact, for us, many people are unable to move. So if you look at how countries develop, you yourself have given the example of India and China. I was reading recently, I think it was one of the states in India that was, you know, attracting a lot of investment. I think the Tatars, the others were coming to put up industries there. There are certain incentives that you give people to be able to invest in your state or in your country. So I asked somebody, what is the difference between having a plant that manufactures BMW in Guangzhou and in your home village of Lugari? What is the difference? For the plant, really, the plant doesn't know where it is. It can actually exist anywhere. But what is it that Guangzhou have done that we have not done in Lugari?
Maybe I should help you in understanding where that problem comes from.
Yes.
I heard a leader say that we cannot develop from borrowing. I equally want to say you cannot develop out of taxation.
Yes.
And I started by saying that there are 4 critical things that basically is the framework on which an economy can grow. It's people, very critical. It's natural resources, very critical. Capital, very critical. And they now have brought in entrepreneurship, taking responsible, calculated risks to move forward. In all that we are doing, there is nothing closer to that.
No.
And in my defense of Kibaki, with what he did, we are no longer slaves of IMF. We had been declared
we had a balanced budget.
a low middle class income country, meaning you are free to make your own decision who you want to associate with financially and whether to borrow or not borrow.
Correct.
And then comes in leadership that mismanages borrowing. Yet in any financial management, there are clear percentages, and you have that competence in abundance in this country. Who will tell you this percentage of borrowing is wrong? Secondly, you are talking about growth, and you are increasing taxes. There's no country that develops out of taxes. You develop out of investment. And investment is based on those 4 things. Lastly, when you raise taxes, it means you are chasing away investment. When you chase away investment, you are not creating any job. When you decide, I want to deal with the basic thing that differentiates civilization and Stone Age, the basic 3, housing, shelter, and food, and that you go back to the Stone Age and you are really thinking as a leader, self-acclaimed intelligence, understanding all know it all, emasculating the executive, emasculating parliament, emasculating the Senate, and that you alone, with those that you work with, who are Mr. Say, will help you drive the country forward. That is the total failure of
for me, honestly speaking, and I know we can talk about these things forever, but the motivation for why people seek office is very, very important.
Yes. I want to agree with you, particularly on the behavior of leadership and those entrusted with the offices in this country. One of the hardest things for anybody who wants to do any business in this country is actually to get started.
Correct.
That the costs you undergo might be higher than the investment you want to do. And it becomes so unreasonable that during, I remember the late Kiano, we used to be told those stories. The 10% thing started during Kenyatta's time. That 10% continued all through. Then we came to the Kibaki era, where that was done much more craftily. But then came another era where people didn't care anymore. That they are asking for commissions higher
than the cost of
the project. If you did a project, they are asking for commissions higher than the profits you'll make, meaning that even the taxes you are producing, you produce them to go to people's pockets. I want to believe that we still have an opportunity as a country. We have a lot we can learn from those who have managed to move forward. And that all we lack are leaders of goodwill.
Correct. And
then we also, to some extent, have our media to blame. They have also taken sides. That the media will paint Honorable Sifuna as somebody who cannot think unless Raila has said. Yet Sifuna thinks. The media paints Jirongo as Jirongo is just Moi's crony. And those are people who believed in easy things. Jirongo has no mind of his own. Jirongo was just lucky to be with Moi, to be given money. Then you wonder, This Sifuna has survived all through. You wonder, this Jirongo finished with Moi in 92 and in 93. He was being fought from morning up to evening. What is this that Jirongo was correcting in the Moi regime, that really those people who are around Moi came for his neck? These are issues.
But you also don't talk about it. You see, at the end of the day, you have a responsibility to set the record straight. I mean, Cyrus, because the perception that people have about you, it did not just come out of nothing. I told you are one of the most famous people in the 90s. I mean, and you are associated with the money. You have never told us where you used to get that money. You should tell us.
No, I got it from Azina Estate. I got it from Saika Estate.
But you can't,
I got it from Kemri Estate.
Let me ask you, you can't build
tangible things you can see.
You can't build Azina Estate and come and distribute money in the villages. What for? For the election of Moi? No. This money that Moi used to give you guys, I'll go and do happy. Me, I've told you, I also got 500 shillings.
Now, these are
at
issues.
The Kanu office. So if you address
let me explain to you. These are issues.
Address them.
These are issues which most people will never understand.
Yeah.
That there are times I'll go to the media to deny a statement. And when you follow that statement, it was difficult for you to discover where the statement came from. But finally, we discovered that there are statements that will be done by the then in State House by those people, NSIS, and is faxed from State House. They'll even say, Jirongo said this against the chairman of the Electoral Commission, and you have no idea. Really, basically,
there is that manipulation.
There is that. But when you ask about money and where the money that was being distributed came from,
yes,
this is a very obvious thing. And I don't know why Kenyans...
What do you mean by obvious?
It is so obvious. Somebody comes up with a scheme. He says, I'll buy gold and you export, and then central bank gives him 30%. What really brought the ruin of the Kenyan economy at that time? Obviously, 58 billion shillings being paid out for nothing to somebody exporting paper is a lot of money to get out of a system.
I know.
Given the value.
I know, but
so what 58...
Are you saying the money that I received was Goldenberg money?
Obviously, it was Goldenberg money.
You are not printing money.
Now, if the only people who can print money is the government.
Because Moi and the government, Moi was the government. And that money was coming from a Kanu office. It was not from a bank.
Remember this, Even a bank existed called Exchange Bank. Purposely put up, right? To, under pretense that we are looking for dollars. And the money is being given by central bank to these people, and adding them 33%, import compensation, all that. That is the money that was being distributed. And that is part of the war I had.
So why did they attach your name, personally, your name to the 500 shilling note?
Thank God I'm alive. I can still talk.
Yes.
I even was under attack, if you remember, the time they opened the fire on me in Westlands.
Yes.
They really tried hard to look for a scapegoat. That scapegoat was meant to be YK92, a team that Jirongo led. They tried and tried and tried, including elimination, so that they can find where to put the blame. All through, we have gone through cases of Goldenberg. I don't appear. But you'll find names there that were handling all that money. Even if we have what power, assuming the money was being printed and given to Jirongo, Jirongo would not have distributed that money. Actually, if you ask me what was spent, I have no idea. You will find the people driving cars, and you're supposed to be working with those people. When you ask him, where did you find this car? I was given by Joshua Kulei. But as far as they are concerned...
So you're saying
everybody's concerned, Jirongo knows where that money came from. Jirongo knows how these boys did this. This was an amorphous thing, and if you understand how the government operates, YK was operated by the intelligence of the country. YK was operated by State House. YK...
So you are just figureheads.
You are there thinking you are leading people, but you have people... If you remember, there was even a coup in YK 92, led by Sam Nyamwea and a few other people, to kick me out because I'm not towing the line. So there is a wrong perception about individuals without interrogation. When this matter is interrogated in detail, And when I put pen to paper and tell Kenyans...
You are writing a book?
I wrote it a long time ago, but I can't even release it.
Why?
Because I'll end up in... some people might just murder me.
But the book is already there. You know,
it is there
cannot
written,
kill a voice.
We cannot give it out at the moment. But it will come out at the right time. Kenyans need to understand.
Are you still afraid of that there are still elements within the power circles right now that have grudges from 92? Because those stories that you're telling,
that still pull strings in this country.
Okay.
And let me tell you, Sifuna, most Kenyans don't know what their government is. They have no idea.
Yeah.
And at one time, I wondered to myself, the capacity of those elected, the competences of those elected. Do Kenyans really know what they're electing?
No.
We end up with absolute idiots in positions that you wonder, how did this person get into this position?
Yes.
There are times you would discuss with the people in leadership and you say, you know, this must not be done like this, like that. And if his mind opens up a bit and he understands what you're saying is a good thing, he'll tell you, don't talk about it. Keep quiet. So that he comes up as somebody who has come up with some imagination and thought and he's talked about it. The problem we have as a country, anybody can rule us. That's the biggest problem we have as a country.
Yeah.
We have not interrogated the competence of Sifuna to know that if I handed over this country to Sifuna, it will move forward.
Yeah.
If I handed over this country to Sifuna, Sifuna will be after competence and not tribe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And not family.
Yeah.
That remains the biggest problem in our republic.
Yeah, but let me just tell you, as even as a member of parliament, this thing called government is very complex.
It is.
And I tell people that even just joining that institution of parliament, there are things that you get to learn, to see, to observe.
You get shocked.
And you are very tempted to conclude that this country cannot be helped. Because it's like there is...
I'm happy that you have the same script.
Yeah.
Same page.
There is infrastructure that ensures that anything that is going to benefit the people does not happen. Things that are so obvious to everyone that this is what makes sense, you find people doing the exact opposite. And then you ask yourself, why does this state of affairs exist? Who is supposed to benefit from this state of affairs? Because it is not the people who benefit from this state of affairs. So I understand what you're saying. By the way, it is not just Kenyans generally. You can imagine even for me, as an elected member of parliament, there are things that I believe I still do not know. Yeah. There are things that I know for a fact I don't understand why they are the way they are. But it is a system. It is the way things are. And you get if you just relax a bit, it's very easy for you to be co-opted into whatever system is, such that you just come to this conclusion that it is not your effort, that things were supposed to be like that. And that even if you fight and you feel like you are on your own.
The same things exist in the executive. I'll give you an example I lived. There were these rumors that toxic waste is being dumped in Northeastern. People knew I had the courage to face the leadership that was, including the President Moi. They then used the intelligence. A friend of mine is given a document proving where the toxic waste is being dumped in Kenya. I did not think twice. The first thing I did was to get a phone call and call Mzee Moi. I want a meeting. And I took off and went to that meeting with Sam Nyamweya and the late Choge to go and explain to President Moi that I have this document proving that toxic waste is being dumped somewhere in Northeastern, pretending that we are looking for oil. When I passed over the document from President Moi, I expected him to be very excited and tell me, listen, Cyrus, I want to find out what this is. You mean my people can do such a dirty thing against Kenyans? And the reaction I got was totally different. I was asked a question. Where did you find these documents?
Yeah.
Then I said, Your Excellency, it is you who told us that we must never reveal the source of our information. So you have the powers and you have the system. I have given you a document. Investigate and find out, is it true or not true? No, you will not leave this State House unless you tell me where you found this document. And the argument went on. It was so heated that the security of the president started knocking the door, thinking that Jirongo is a madman, maybe he's fighting the president. They were opening to check what is happening because the president hit the roof. And I did not know the crime I've committed. I have come to you to tell you this thing will hurt Kenyans if it is actually happening. And today, look at this country. Assess the way cancer is finishing Kenyans. The highest rate of cancer victims starts from Embu, Nyeri, Meru, coming to Central. As you move towards Western Province, the rate of cancer is lower. Later on, when I left State House, when we were leaving,
How did you leave? Did you tell him?
No, after arguing, after so many things, when I realized I have messed up myself, is when we were leaving. And I want to tell you, nikisikia hii maneno mahali yengine, utanyoroka. Then I realized, did I go to a thief to tell a thief you are a thief?
You went to the thief.
I had never realized what I was doing. I thought I'm talking for the good of the country, yet I'm reporting
to the person doing the deed.
To people, I can't claim he was the one doing, but obviously he was aware of what was happening. Because he even offered a solution. He said, sisi tunajua, mahali mambo kama hii inafanyika ni Somalia. You know, that raised... Then when we were crossing the gate of State House, it was about 4. I had an announcement. Gaylord Avedi, who was then, who had just been appointed a permanent secretary, Minister of Energy. And the government has just started, it's so new. He has been transferred to office of the president as a PS, and the Mutitu, who used to be the PS there, has been returned. Then obviously I knew I have touched something that is going to bury me. The following day, I was arrested and went to the CID headquarters. And they only wanted one thing.
The source.
What did you disagree with the president over? And remember, when I was leaving, I was told, nikisikia hii kitu mahali yengine, utaona. So I realized I'm playing with a grave here. I got to be careful. So no Arapto. Every morning I reported at 6 o'clock. I was asked one question only. Where did you get this information? And what is this that you disagreed with the president over? And my answer was very simple. Ask the president. He told me not to discuss it with anybody else. And I said that for 2 months, reporting at CID headquarters, because I realized if I opened my mouth to explain that I went to the president with these details and that, then the president will get the same information from Noah. And it will be clear that I'm discussing what we disagreed upon with other people. And I've been warned, nitajua. Then I'll be dead meat. I never mentioned it. So in conclusion, we have a variety of dynamics that will change this country. First of all, is to paint a clear vision of where we want to go, as far as I'm concerned. Secondly, to realize the vices that have held us back. Tribalism instead of competence. Then also, ask Kenyans, they have a role to play. The quality of leadership they elect. And thirdly, leadership. When we talk about the quality of leadership that we elect, are we Africans? Are we pushing an African agenda? Or are we slaves of other nations? In my view, if we paint a correct picture and get the right leadership and not tribe, and that leadership understands. Kibaki failed when he then now became a Kikuyu. Initially, he was not a Kikuyu. When he was working with Mike, he was not a Kikuyu. But when now the really Kikuyu came into play as the main advisors, then Kibaki started going down. And that's why you sang Kibaki very loudly when he was not a Kikuyu. By the time he became a Kikuyu, mukakosana. Those will be my sincere views.
That is the correct position. Now, for me, first of all, let me just say, I don't envy you in this attempt to, there is a mental block that I don't know who put it there. But then immediately your name is said. There is a perception that I don't think, even if you took 10 years to explain yourself, I think the way people view and perceive you is not going to change. And the problem with that situation is that there's actually some things that we can learn from your experiences then, and some pointers of, proper warnings about the sort of people who should be able to go into power, should be allowed around power. But because it is Jirongo saying it, you will, of course, be immediately dismissed and said, huyo ni Kanu Hawk, anajaribu hapa kuja kujitetea. So I don't envy you from that particular perspective. But genuinely, you have a responsibility to always speak out and explain to Kenyans that these luxuries that we enjoy right now, it's very easy for them to be taken away.
They can be
you can imagine, and I'm sure you will have a conversation with my friend Okio Mtata at some point. We are back to the era where a president can directly threaten you as an individual because you have exercised a right that is constitutional. Okio Mtata took a matter to court after we have exhausted all other avenues. When the finance bill was in parliament, there is nothing we didn't say. If it is memoranda, we submitted memoranda. If it is views, we gave views. But they don't listen to Kenyans. They chose to listen to the IMF and the other foreign benefactors. So our only recourse was then to the courts. You take a matter to the court and the president physically, just the way that you have described what Moi did to you, tells Omtata that wewe utanijua. You think you can defeat a president in the courts. You will not win in this particular case. So we are slowly witnessing a return to those days because, Cyrus, for me, honestly, for me and my children, we don't want to live in fear. Fear is the worst human emotion because it can actually paralyze you. We don't want to be afraid to say things. We don't want to ever go back to those spaces. The young people who are on TikTok, who are on Facebook, who are on IG should not be feeling afraid to say the things the way they see them and to express yourself, because if your constitution says you have the freedom of expression, you should be able to say whatever it is you want to say. So we don't want to ever go back there. And it falls back to, do we elect people who believe in these values that we expressed in this constitution? Do we elect people who actually believe that you have a freedom of association? Does William Ruto understand the freedom of expression, the freedom of protest, for instance? If you can tear gas a birthday cake, you just see people here having a good time, a bash, and you throw tear gas at a birthday cake because the mere thought that somebody is being celebrated is something that makes you insecure. Then it tells you that that person does not believe that they should even be in power. So what we need to do, we need to have a conversation. One of the things that I encourage Kenyans every day, watu wa Mungu sio wachache vile Kat Williams anasema. The number of good people in this country is quite high. There are many good people in this country. It is our responsibility to look for those good people because only good people can do good things. If somebody has a history that, like the history of William Ruto, and you have told us some very shocking things, and I don't know why these things are just brushed off. You have told us very shocking things about your experiences with the Kanu regime. Even William Ruto himself, the things you saw with your own eyes as you narrated during Jacob Juma's funeral. But somehow people just brush that aside. No. Huyu ni mtu wa Mungu. Huyu mwenye anaenda kanisa, yeye ndiye amejenga hii makanisa. And then you make the mistake of actually giving power to those sorts of characters. The country will never move forward. So my hope, when we watch movies, we wait for what they call plot twists.
Yes.
When you go around the country right now, every single Kenyan denies voting for Ruto. All of them are saying now he is a bad man. I don't know what plot twist we will have before 2027 for these same Kenyans to come and give this guy a second term. But I have realized that this thing we have discussed here about tribalism and the hatred for other people, there are people who are in a space where they hate other people more than they love themselves. That I would rather be in pain. I would rather be sleeping hungry for as long as Raila is not president. That even if it is Raila who can actually make the economy turn around and make sure that I am able to feed my children, I would rather my children starve than see an uncircumcised Luo being president of this republic.
The same thing you're telling me.
Yes.
It will take over, I don't know how many times
you
Let me just tell you something else.
Where hata usijaribu. Wacha tu Wakenya waendelee tu vile.
I just want to tell you something. Sifuna, I want to defend Kibaki in conclusion, and I want to declare.
I thought we were finished.
No, we're finished. But I just want to declare that there is a personal interest that makes me defend him.
Okay.
There's a time a bus of Masinde Muliro hit a pothole on the Kakamega-Webuye Road. It overturned and we lost 5 students from Masinde Muliro University. There were many more who died, but those 5 came from Lugari. And I said, I was a member of parliament, and I said the Thika highway was being built. And I raised an issue. I said, when did the government of Kibaki discover oil in Thika that they are spending 40 billion to do that highway to Thika, when in my village, I'm losing 5 students who are supposed to graduate because of a pothole.
Yes.
And in my view, I was literally complaining on equitable distribution of development. Kibaki took the time to look for me. And I went to office of the president. I was so scared to go alone because I didn't know what was going to happen to me.
You thought it was the same
experience I'm going to have that I had previously. So I asked Soita Shitanda, who was my friend, please go with me. And we went to the office of the president. And Kibaki, Mudhaura was there. Mudhaura is alive today, everybody can verify. And he asked me, why are you making this? I told him, Your Excellency, we are peasant farmers. The investment of our parents is in their children. And that is how we diversify our wealth. When we invest in our children, we expect them to get employed and take care of us.
Yes.
Because that investment in children doesn't come easily. We sell land, we sell animals, we sell everything to educate our children. These are 5 families who have sold their assets for their children to go to secondary school.
Yes.
And they can die just because of a pothole. And Your Excellency, 40 billion is being spent just to do a road for one community. Why wasn't this money split so that we have some patches across the country? And Kibaki kept quiet for a while. Then he called Mudhaura. He told me in Swahili, mwambie hiyo barabara iko wapi. Then I told Mudhaura, the whole road from Kisumu to Kitale is potholes. You can't drive. And you might fix the one between Kakamega and Webuye, but many more other Westerners are going to die. People have come up with a lot of claims. Kibaki ordered this money that was supposed to do. It was a World Bank thing to do a project in Laikipia. He decided, no, that money does the road from Kisumu all the way to Kitale. In the presence of Soita, Mudhaura is alive. This is a man who was interested in finding solutions.
Okay.
Now, that is where I'm coming from.
But
that's a selfish thing. That's why I wanted to tell you, maybe my defense of Kibaki, to a level that sometimes you fail to understand, is out of him really coming out and not being a person who believes development must be done in central.
That's what I'm saying. You can give him credit because you require somebody with a global view of the country. You develop a blueprint that is going to help everyone. Because one of the biggest misunderstandings, people think that if you build a road from Kisumu to Kitale, you are building it for Luyas.
No, it's for everyone.
In fact, those Luyas,
it's for the economic growth.
If you go to many of these major towns, the people who do businesses there are not even the locals themselves.
And the children at Masinde Muliro University are not just Luyas.
What has happened is, although every Kenyan knows how much money their county gets under the devolved unit. I can tell you Nairobi has gotten an allocation of 20 billion shillings and the constitution has specified where you can use this money. Can you tell me of the national share, which is almost 3/4 of the budget, how much money goes to Kakamega County? You can't tell, because what they do is that in this very dangerous talk of shareholding that Gachagua and Ruto have been perpetuating, that once you get the central government, you look at the places that voted for this government and you say these are the people who are going to benefit in terms of development. You take the entire water budget. If they say the country is constructing 50 dams, 45 of those dams are in one region. And the rest of the country have to do with those 5 remaining dams wagawane. Because nobody sheds a light on the allocation of the national government share to the 47 devolved units. And that is where all the inequity is being perpetuated. Even up to today, I can tell you that is still going on. Because there are people who believe this government is theirs. This is ours. And even if you see what the county governments are doing, they have gotten to a place where Kenyans believe that if you come from Kakamega, the county of Kakamega is for the Luyas of Kakamega. And it exists solely for those Luyas in Kakamega. In fact, if you do a very simple exercise, for like where I come from in Bungoma, tell the people that Bungoma has received 9 billion shillings in equitable share. Now, there are 2 choices here. Can we build a hospital? Ama watu wapange line kila mtu apatiwe pesa yake aende. What do you think those people will say?
Patia sisi pesa yetu twende.
Exactly. I sit in the Public Accounts Committee. One of the laws requires that at least 30% of the people employed in a county government should not be the dominant community in that area. There is no single county, maybe with the exception of Nairobi, that has tried, because Nairobi is largely cosmopolitan. There's no county that has complied with that law. If you go to Kisii, even if you were born and raised in Kisii as a Bukusu, and you're the most competent doctor there, they will not employ you, because Kisii is for Kisis. Forget even going far. If you come from Bungoma and you are born in Kakamega, do you know you can't be employed in Kakamega County? Wanakuambia, nyinyi wa Bukusu muende wapi? Bungoma. We have a fundamental problem in this country. We have a very big problem. And if you don't address that problem, there is nowhere we are going. How many people can do what Kibaki did for you? How many people can say, yes, I am the person in charge of a country. Indeed, the first thing I should do is to pave my grandmother's road. But the people of Kirinyaga, if we do this road between this town and this town, the output in terms of the economy is going to be such that my grandmother is going to feel the impact. How many people can do that?
Very few.
And that's what we are saying. For me, the things that I have learned in the short time that I have been in politics, this country will never change until Kenyans change. Why did you vote for Sifuna? What was the criteria? What did you look for? What is it that he told you that convinced you that this is the right person for this job? And until those questions are answered objectively, we're not going anywhere. If you're going to just look at the second name or the political party, you just look at the party and say, hii ni chama ya nyumbani, patia huyu mtu kura. Then you get to the assemblies. I see the memes that people generate on TikTok and other social media. A senator trying to express himself on the floor of the house. And they ask, surely, who elected this character? At the national level, you can ask that question. But if you go home, where that guy comes from, you will understand why he was elected. Maybe that entire place is made up of his clan, or his family is large enough, or they have a lot of money, So the criteria has totally been distorted. And I tell Kenyans every day, until you review that criteria, you will end up with clowns and all sorts of wash characters, the way that the former interior minister told us that up to 50% of Bunge is going to be made up of those characters who are just voting machines when debate on a bill is going on. They are in the lounge there, drinking tea and mandazi, waiting for the speaker to put the question. Because for them, the only thing they can do is to vote, depending on the direction that they have received.
I totally agree with you. And
we have no country.
I want to tell you one thing. We can't finish this discussion.
It will not end.
And I want to believe that you'll create time out of your busy schedule. I'm going to create time.
Yes.
Really, you are a mind that I'm finding very interesting. A mind that seems to understand the actual place where the shoe pinches.
Yeah.
And it will be unfair to this country if your thought is not discussed in detail.
Just like it's unfair for you not to give us your book.
I'm going to give it to you.
To tell us the truth about what you people were doing in YK92 and where you go that body, Jirongo.
I've given you a glimpse of it.
Yeah. Usiogope, wewe kitabu.
Sasa wacha tufike hapo leo. But I want us to find time, Sifuna. Your mind is clear. You seem to understand quite a bit of things. Let us discuss it openly. Those who will be willing to benefit from it, let them benefit from it. If the country wants to benefit from it, let them benefit from it. But what is our duty? To say the truth,
correct,
as raw as it is, and paint the picture of where the country should go. If we can't get that image correctly, then we can never drive towards it. I would really love Kenyans to learn from what Senator Sifuna has said, the kind of interaction we've had, and it's out of the views of Kenyans that we shall find a really solution, because it's clear all of us have failed this country, as Kenyans, as voters, and as a leadership. And the more we interact and discuss this issue, the more we form our minds on what kind of leaders do we really need to elect. Your comments are most valued. Thank you, my brother.
Wacha tuachie hapo. Hii story hizi isha.